Gen Z is an interesting generation in that we were kind of grown up with, you know, YouTube and Facebook, and then you had all those early influencers, 10, 15 years ago that would make funny videos. And, that's kind of when that kind of space we would look up to these people, we would idolize people, even like boy bands and stuff like that. We would kind of idolize these personalities online that maybe back in like generations before, they were so easy to create who you wanted them to be, right? I think my mum and I talk about this all the time, is that, when she had an idol, like a boy band that she looked up to, you can kind of visualize, you can kind of imagine them as anything you want, whereas now we know them. They're on our screens all the time. And I think we're coming out of it now, at least kind of people I know in this generation now, where I think we're clocking it now. And it's like, okay, we're really trying to consume this media a little bit more mindfully. So who is, and I think we can read the influence, and we can pick up on who is authentic and then who isn't, and who's just trying to sell us another thing.
Welcome to the Leaders of Influence podcast, the show where leadership is not a title. It's all about influence and impact. Each episode, I sit down with leaders who have built trust, moved teams, and shaped outcomes where it mattered most. No motivational quotes, just the decisions, the habits, and the pressure-tested principles that create real influence. If you want to lead with more clarity, credibility, and care factor, hit follow right now so you don't miss the next conversation. Now, let's get into today's episode. With Anton Guinea, here we are. I think we're about 8 for today. And Adelia and Deandria has been good enough, and I really appreciate all of the amazing humans that come on to the Find Your Influence podcast to talk about an amazing topic, like such a cool word, influence, and what that really means. One of the reasons that I asked Andrea to come on is because Andrea is a Sydney-based marketing and comms professional. Communication is Andrea's jam. And Andrea has this global perspective that she's developed, shaped by living in Switzerland, Canada, and of course our own amazing Australia. Adelia, Deandria, currently leads integrated marketing and communications across Dentsu, ANZ, supporting a portfolio of creative, media, and digital transformation agency brands. Adelia's work sits at the intersection of brand, reputation, and demand creation, with a hands-on bias towards execution and stakeholder alignment, which is really, I'm keen to unpack all of this. At Dentsu, Adelia has progressed from comms specialist to marketing and communication executive for ANZ. Wow. Australia, New Zealand, for anyone that's outside of our region. And we're coming up to Anzac Day too. And tonight I'm doing a Walk for Warriors, which supports our
Lovely.
local, I know, defence. 3-hour walk tonight, Adelia.
Wow.
In this role,
That's great.
I know, exciting. In this role, Adelia runs multi-channel initiatives spanning campaign execution, event management, content development, and internal and external comms. And who better to find out about influence than a communications guru? Adelia Deandria, what an amazing opportunity that you and I have. I feel like the opportunity is, and the privilege is mine to hear from you. How would you describe the concept of influence, please, Adelia?
I think influence is a very timely topic at the moment, especially I think, and I think that's so great that you've kind of reached out to like members of kind of the younger community working their way up in the corporate space as well, because I feel like it's so important to talk about influence that isn't necessarily tied to authority. So I think there's power in being able to influence without even having that position or that experience or that kind of that title, right? I think there is a way to lead by an idea or an example or a behavior. I think all of that plays into what an influencer is and what influence is. So it doesn't necessarily need to be like, a CEO or someone who's been in the industry for a long time. I think influence can be tied to even in a friend group or a mother or a child. It can be family, like kind of ties within family as well. You can kind of influence each other that way. So I think it's a very intimidating thing because you've got a lot of kind of weight that is tied to influence, and it's like, how am I leading, how am I influencing, and all that. But you can be an influencer in so many different kinds of ways, and it's intimidating as well because you've got all of these influencers now on social media that are trying to influence in the best way that they know how, and it can be very oversaturated. And I think it's very hard to find your voice within that kind of space. And so I think it's a very timely issue, and it's not an issue. I feel it's a very timely topic, and that's why I think it's such an interesting kind of angle to have I think the platform that you have is kind of like, targeting influence, because everyone can be influential, right? So yeah, I
Great
think
answer.
that's
Great answer. Now, you're Gen Z, yeah?
yes, I am.
Great. Love it.
I am.
Love our Gen
Sure am.
Love our Gen Zers. So I got two Gen Zers, and they're two
Oh, great.
beautiful
Great. Yeah.
young men. So it just, so grateful that the Gen Zers will come on. And I don't get a lot of Gen Zers, so I'm so glad that you
Great.
accepted the invitation.
It's great.
And you've grown up
Awesome.
very differently to, say, the Gen Xers. We didn't have all this influence when we were sort of coming through the org chart, or even just through our lives.
Yeah.
And for you, social media is probably such a big thing because it's been around and it's been such a big part of your life in your generation. And you mentioned that, and you mentioned that it's hard to sort of find yourself and to be,
Yeah.
maybe who you want to be on social, sort of cut through, because there's so many people out there doing it. Can you just bring our listeners in? What as a Gen Zer now, what impact does social media have on your life? What do you look to some of those influences? Like, does it work for you? Do you buy the shoes that they promote, or the glasses that they like, or?
Yeah, I think Gen Z is an interesting generation in that we were kind of grown up with, YouTube and Facebook, and then you had all those early influencers, 10, 15 years ago that would make funny videos. And, that's kind of when that kind of space we would look up to these people, we'd idolize people, even like boy bands and stuff like that. We would kind of idolize these personalities online that maybe back in like generations before, they were so easy to create who you wanted them to be, right? I think my mum and I talk about this all the time, is that, when she had an idol, like a boy band that she looked up to, you can kind of visualize, you can kind of imagine them as anything you want, whereas now we know them. They're on our screens all the time. And I think we're coming out of it now, at least kind of people I know in this generation now, where I think we're clocking it now. And it's like, okay, we're really trying to consume this media a little bit more mindfully. So and I think we can read the influence, and we can pick up on who is authentic and who is kind of really going out there with more of an aligned message. I'm just going to flip this down. And then who isn't, and who's just trying to sell us another thing. So I think that is the power that Gen Z actually holds, is that we've grown up with it. We know the gig. The gig is up. We know now it's up, because there's no fooling, because because it's so oversaturated, there's actually power in that. There's like, how are you going to get your voice to cut through with authenticity in a sea full of people who just want to get their voices out there and just love the sound of their own voice? So I think there's actually a power in that. And I think sometimes people might find it a bit intimidating. Like, how am I going to cut through all the noise on here? Because there's so much. But I think you can play it to your advantage too, because there's a lot of noise that isn't really relevant. And people in our generation are now we're not buying what they're selling anymore.
No.
So, so you actually have to lead with authenticity now.
I love it.
And being who you are. So I feel like that's my experience with it anyway.
Thank you so much. Is that something you can turn off, or is that at my end?
Yes.
Pretty please.
That's
Pretty
me.
please.
There
I
we
should
go.
say pretty please. Thank you so much. Because that's good. It's good that all that noise has come through. It means you've got pretty good internet, because it's really clear.
Great news. I know. It's now that they're all coming out now.
Oh wow,
Noises.
that was a really, really intriguing answer for this old Gen Xer. Like, who probably just saw Justin Bieber as the first probably big YouTuber, and think back to what that was like, and
And now think back to, recently where some of our greatest pop hits or some of the number ones are not even real people. They're sort of AI generated
No,
music,
AI.
which is really
Yeah.
interesting, right? Like, what about that for a journey in the last probably 10 or 15 years? And so,
Super interesting.
super. Now, let me ask you this. Who influenced you? How did you get into comms for a start? Did you do a degree or did you have an influence?
I love this question because it actually takes me back to the fact that I initially wanted to be a journalist. Since I was a kid, I always loved creative writing. I loved poetry and I was a very creative child. And I think I wanted to challenge that energy. Later on, I think maybe in my kind of later teen years, I wanted to challenge that for good. And I wanted to start writing for good. So one of my biggest inspirations was Anthony Bourdain. And I feel like a lot of people would say that because he inspired me so much in terms of just seeing people and um giving people that space to kind of tell their own story, because I think there can be a lot of ego in journalism. And I love that he took that ego out of it and then you let people tell their own stories. So I think that's kind of what my biggest inspiration was. But then going back again is like, obviously then that kind of led me down the comms path because I kind of realized maybe journalism isn't for me. And I fell more into the comms space because you can still tell people's stories through communications and storytelling in any capacity. And I think it's a great skill that can be transferred anywhere. So I feel like that communications background and really kind of applying those skills in I know it's more of a corporate kind of in a corporate setting, but it's still storytelling. So it got me to actually it manifested in that way. So I would say that's kind of how I ended up where I am now, and obviously still very early on my career, and I could end up in journalism again, but I think for me it is just conversation. I think that's why this opportunity was so interesting to me as well, because I really like talking to people
Oh, good.
and getting to know people,
Good.
right?
Me too.
So
We're the extroverted extrovert.
yes, there you go. Yeah. So that's probably how I kind of got my start, and I've wanted to be a journalist for the longest time, probably since I was like 9 or 10.
Wow. Was there a particular part of journalism? Was it criminal or was it sports or was it, news? Like what what attracted you to journalism?
Definitely like human rights kind of
Oh, gotcha.
human rights journalism. I think that was always, I was a huge advocate of it. So even throughout uni, I minored in human rights and social justice. So I was I tried to play activist wherever I could, and I tried to speak up for injustices that I saw, and even just having an opinion now. And I think, even though I've kind of joined the workforce and maybe I'm not really actively practicing that journalism every day, you can still be an advocate. You can still stand for something. And I think that's how I want to live my life, is just, you know what, you're allowed to have a job that doesn't actually, you don't need to necessarily be making all these changes all the time, but even just speaking about it and standing for something and having those morals and foundations that you practice every day, I think that means something. So that's how I try to kind of live that kind of, I try to kind of embody the journalistic integrity that way. It's just kind of day to day, So
Beautifully
I
put.
feel like that's
Beautifully put. I love your, can I say, and I want to choose my words carefully, how well you articulate for someone, and you keep saying that you haven't got a lot of experience. If I was coaching you, I'd say take that out of your vocabulary because no one would ever know. Do you know what I mean? Like
oh
just don't, just lean into the confidence that, of your communication, because it's really quite amazing for you say little experience, but you've lived in 3 different countries.
yeah,
And like
I have.
you've got, this world view, I think your intro said. So that's phenomenal, Adelia. It's
Thank
quite
you.
impressive, really, quite impressive. So
Thank you so much.
keep up the good work. And now you're doing communication and you're storytelling in corporate. And I think,
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I just feel like corporate storytelling is a crucial element of communicating the
Yeah.
why we do business or what the business stands for or where it came from. And, and good
Yeah.
on you for doing that work. And And what's the secret to good corporate storytelling?
I think the secret is, first of all, authenticity. Because once again, like going back to where I was, what I was saying before is that we've been in this space now for so long where I think people can pick up when someone isn't being authentic. And especially in a corporate setting, they know the jargon, they know the lingo, they know when you're just trying to get something out just to get it out, right? So I think that why, and treating people as people. And I think that kind of human connection, especially now as we're moving into the age of AI, and I know that AI is talked about everywhere now and it's all over our feeds, and I don't want to be that another person to talk about it, but I'm not, because I'm not an AI expert. All I know is that the longer we can hold on to that human connection, especially in a workplace, the better. Because it is a very scary thought of everything being automated and everything, because I think that's what builds community. And that's why people kind of love coming to work. And I know for me personally, the biggest part of why I love my job is the community and the people. So if you take that out of it, it's a scary kind of world that kind of the thought of that is a very scary kind of place to be. So I think it is the authenticity kind of aspect of that's what holds, that's what brings everyone together.
Nice.
And people aren't stupid.
Of course. I
So
love that.
I
I
think they'll
love that.
pick up on the fact that, yeah. So I feel like that's what I would say.
And it's funny, and we won't mention the person who did a speech on national TV recently, and there's some great posts around, word bingo.
Yeah.
Just listening for
Yeah.
expected words that were sort of, everyone was just waiting for them, just the script. Whereas to me, that's not authentic when you just scripted. And I think you're really right. And I think we are probably as a community aware enough now that we want to be connected to the story and the community, and corporates.
Yeah.
Corporates have got such a big role to play in that. So that was one of the reasons I reached out, because I love corporate comms, and I think
Oh, that's great.
and corporate comms is so important, especially during crisis events. Yeah.
Definitely. Absolutely.
And does that fall into your remit as well? Like, have you had that experience to try and tell a story that from a bad news perspective, but maybe reframe that story? Is that something that you've ever had to do?
Well, I had more of an experience that when I was at my old role, because now moving into more marketing, I mean, we're a very small team now. So I think
Right.
wherever we can bring people together in a capacity where things aren't really, going right. And I think every company has that. There's not one company that everything's going well all the time. So I think there's that power in that comms team to kind of tell that story accurately, going back to where I was saying. So telling that story authentically, but, trying to see some light as well, and trying to kind of bring out new processes or new ways of working that actually can bring everyone together and keep spirits up. So there is an art in that, I feel. So we did that in my old role. We did, I supported a lot with the broker comms after an acquisition. And obviously, you've got brokers that were working in these systems for years and years and years. And all of a sudden the big company takes over, and, then they've had to kind of relearn all their systems and all that. And so you don't take that away from them. There was never like, deal with it. This is just how it is. You you talk them through it. You tell them the why. You show them the why. And I think that plays into the kind of comm strategy there, is always remember the why and why this is going to benefit people in the long run. But also not take
And
away
that's
from,
influence.
if there's been layoffs or, if there's been layoffs, you don't take away from the fact that it hurts or that it's not a good place to be. Obviously, you don't take away from those feelings are very valid, but it's like, okay, well, how we reshape the narrative that obviously gives respect to those people, but then shows them the why as well. So there's a fine line, I feel like, with that kind of that comms in crisis situations. You got to find that kind of balance.
Balance. I love that. Really important. What you're really saying is you've got to acknowledge the situation. You've got to acknowledge how people feel. You've got to acknowledge their emotional state to a degree before you can sort of reframe it. Like, to try and put a positive spin on a negative situation without that acknowledgement, I think really does turn people off.
Yes, exactly. That's
And that's
exactly
where your
right. Yeah.
storytelling and the communication skills come into it. Yeah. Wow.
Yes.
Now, for you, when you are communicating internally or externally, when you're writing
Yeah.
something, can you just bring our listeners and our viewers into this? Have you got influence in your mind? Like, have you got, like, have you got a structure for communicating that is influential? Have you got words that you use, for example? Can you just help us unpack that a little bit, please?
Yeah, well, one thing that I always keep in mind when I'm drafting something is, sometimes I always revert back to the little child in me that rambled on because I used to be a creative writer, or not a creative writer, but I used to love creative writing. And I always used to think, oh, maybe I should be a novelist or because I used to love big words and I used to love embellishing on things. And, that was especially in poetry, I mean, making up stuff that sounded great, And so one of the things that kind of my journalism degree taught me was being concise. So you strip it all back and you get rid of the jargon, you get rid of the big words, and you just kind of put yourself, what I usually do is I put myself into that person's position. So whoever the audience is, you pretend that you are reading this for the first time. You've got no context. You're busy. You're checking your emails. You're not really going to spend a lot of time. What do I need to know and why? Strip it back. That's it. And I think in a corporate setting, I think there are times to be creative with your writing and there are times to embellish things and make things fun and make things, but I think the essence of a good, comms or a good piece of comms or a good kind of whatever it is, an email or whatever it is, get to the point because people are busy. And I think there is once again an art, and I think people study for years on how to actually learn that, how to be concise with your writing after, maybe being on the more of the creative writing side or the novelist side or writing a story. That's the time to kind of go on and, use your words and tell that story. You can kind of go through your life in that. But there's a time and a place, I feel like, when it comes to corporate.
Gotcha. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And and when you are writing, do you think about influence? Like you put yourself in that, but do you have a goal? Like before you sit down and do a comms, I'm guessing it's very
Mhm.
purpose driven. Like you wouldn't sit down to do organizational comms without a real, right, this is a key message from this. How do I get there based on what my audience needs? Is that sort of the process?
Yeah, that's usually the process because
Oh,
it all kind of goes down to the strategy. And I think um you'll kind of you always have to remember your why, I guess, that key message. So
no,
there's obviously going to be something that happens organizationally that obviously needs to be communicated, and we use obviously that various channels to do that. um but every channel is tailored differently, and that might have a different audience. Well, we might have different comms that go out internally, then have something a little bit more
mm,
fun and lighthearted for external channels or for clients. Or so you're going to tailor all these different pieces of comms differently, but the message kind of has to be coherent across them all. And you have to tell the same story and share that same kind of message across all of your different, all the different channels and to all of your audiences. Um, so I feel like that's kind of how you do it. And I think, yeah, so I think that's kind of what
yeah,
how you, yeah,
I love it.
that's,
No, thank you. No, that's good. That's good. That's good. Um, hey, let me ask you this. Can we jump out of influence for a moment? Or actually, no.
yeah,
Let's link influence to leadership. Is it okay if I
yes,
ask you for all of my Gen X counterparts? So as you can imagine, as a leadership coach, I get asked a lot, how do I lead the younger generation? Because, we're struggling to lead them. And I go, okay, cool. Let's sit down and have a conversation
yeah,
about that. And I've done a lot of research and I've got two Gen Z boys. What is your tip, your comms, if you were to write a
Mhm.
little pitch to, say, the CEO of a big organization that are getting more and more Gen Zers in their workforce? And I know I'm putting you on the spot here
Mhm.
because this wasn't in the list, and so I'm
Uh,
going to just talk for another
no,
minute or two
I
to let
love
you
this
collect your
question.
thoughts. um, what would that comm say? What can we do as leaders to be better leaders for Generation Z employees?
I love this question. And I love it because as someone who is uh, still trying to kind of, and I'm not taking away from the obviously, you know, I'm very grateful for the kind of experience that I've had so far. But obviously, as a young woman in her 20s, especially within women, there's a very there's an imposter syndrome there where I feel that maybe my ideas won't get picked up or my ideas won't. Whether that's true or not, I think that's kind of an internal thing where I feel like we are maybe the underdogs or the people that kind of stay on mute on a call, or won't speak up or doesn't want to suggest their idea as fear of looking stupid. Oh, you know, that young girl, she doesn't know much. Let's just kind of park that, you know, get a bit more experience under your belt, then we'll talk. And I think a lot of people maybe of this age, not everyone, but I know that I still have moments like that as well. So I think my message to the old generations is, once again, I think it goes back to our initial conversation. Influence doesn't have to be tied to leadership. Just because I'm not managing a team, just because someone isn't managing a team, they can be leaders through ideas, through manner, through the way they carry themselves, through the way they show up to work, through the way they care for their you know, for their fellow team members. That's all influence. So I think we need to listen, because I think, you know, future generations, the power that they hold in terms of shaping the company and shaping the future and these ideas are invaluable. So we need to give them a platform. We need to speak. So whether that is maybe creating like an early careers program or a panel once in a while where we just amplify young voices, there's so many nuggets of gold. And I've heard it so many times, like even in my company, the amount of times I'm taken back by younger voices of my age, younger, that are just speaking wisdom that they wouldn't otherwise be speaking unless they were given the platform, because once again, they stay on mute in meetings because they fear that they can't. They fear that they don't have the experience to. So give it a chance. I feel like giving a chance to that younger, because they've got so many ideas. And once again, we were raised in this generation of AI and we're using it and we're tech savvy, and you know what I mean? So we're already so across how all of these things and how all of these things have manifested, and we probably have good intel into how it looks in the future as well. So that would be my kind of advice: is listen and don't let the fear of 5 years experience, like that has nothing to they still have a place and they still have ideas and opinions that they need to be, I feel like they need to be heard. So that's my experience. I feel like that's my opinion as a younger woman in the kind of corporate workspace.
I love it.
Definitely.
Young voices need to be heard, and so do our sponsors' voices. Let's hear from the sponsor of this episode, who we are so grateful and lucky to have. Adelia DeAndrea, that is a phenomenal question. Amplify young voices, and there is so much research now around that, just about how. So if you did any of the research from an org psych perspective, young people want work-life balance, they're worried about their finances at the moment, and they have big social causes. Like, they're probably the three big general, and I know it's way too general. But I love you've already talked about the social cause piece. I'm not sure about your work-life balance, or, you know, and financially, I'm sure you're getting remunerated well. But at the end of the day, you know, 5 years experience is still 5 years experience.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
I think it's probably sad if leaders devalue, you know, someone with 5 years experience just because of their age, or because it's only 5 years experience. So I guess my I suppose, well, this platform, let's say, is hopefully a shout out to leaders to say amplify those voices. And why don't Gen Xers listen? Are we afraid? Are we dismissive? What's your gut feel? Why is it that
This is a great question. Once again, I know some phenomenal leaders of that thing, and they're great, and they listen, they take the ideas, and they make you feel seen and heard. But I think, you know, we are ingrained from young that experience, gives you that authority to speak and gives you that, wisdom. And I think we tie experience and the amount of, and maybe even just kind of like the amount of time that you've lived on earth, the amount of time to wisdom. We equate that, right? Whereas I think younger people, maybe they put us in a pot to say, okay, well, you listen because that's how we were raised. We were raised not to say anything and to listen and to, speak when spoken to and all that. I feel like that's kind of the narrative there where, just because they were raised in that generation, now it's you guys' turn. We're not going to change anything. This is how we were raised, so we're going to raise you like that too. And not necessarily raised, but that's how we're going to treat you in the workplace as well. So I've seen a lot of that where it's, you've got maybe a certain group of people that I was bullied as a young woman in the workforce, so that's how I'm going to, and I learned that way. And that's all I know how to do. So I'm going to do this and I'm going to treat these, younger cohort of people the same way because that's how I know. That's how I know to be a leader. That's how I was taught by my predecessors. So I think there's a bit of that. And I think it's just not knowing as well. I think, sometimes you just rock up and you do your task and you do what you, and I think you've got kind of, there's a routine aspect to that too, where it's like, okay, well, this is just what I'm used to. So, I've earned this place. And so this gives me the authority to say what I say and do what I do. And no one's going to question it. And so, things are good, the status quo. And status quo is actually really, once again, jargon, but it's a very scary place to be, when you don't actually listen to other people and accept ideas from all kinds of walks of life. It's very detrimental. It could be very detrimental. So
it's very closed-minded,
yeah.
isn't it? It's very
Very.
fixed mindset rather than growth mindset. So no,
Yes.
really well
100%.
articulated. Really well articulated. Are you a future leader? Do you see leadership in your future?
I would hope so. But you know what? Leadership for me, I think it doesn't even necessarily have to be running a team. I think I just want to lead more for as an example. And I think I want to kind of be a leader that, hopefully one day, all going well, I'm going to be a leader that maybe just leads with integrity and authenticity. And so just because I'm, not running a big team, whatever, I just kind of want to lead by example in that way. Because I think who you are as a person, a character speaks volumes. So I don't want it to just be my whole identity is just, oh, I'm a boss. I don't think that's the kind of leader that I want to be. Just want to continue I think not losing myself in that call, because I think it's very easy to lose yourself as you climb that ladder and you get closer to your goals and all that, and you lose track of maybe sometimes who you are or who you want to be. Or so I just want to make sure that I keep that in mind all the time, is just lead through my character and who I want to be as a person, and then everything else can kind of fall into place around that.
Wow, you're so clear on that. That was really well articulated. Well, I hope you've got leadership in your future, because I feel like it would be rewarding for you to be able to pass on some of this knowledge in the future and shape our next generation, the Gen Alphas, when they start. I think this is their first year in the workforce. Oh, hold on. 2012. Yeah, 14. They'll be turning 14 this year.
Wow.
So this will be the next generation is about to hit the workforce at 14 in our Maccas or our bakers or our paper shops or wherever they're starting their careers these days. So.
It's amazing.
Isn't it? Adelia, Deandria, it's just fantastic. What a great conversation. And are you ever going to go back to creative writing? Are you going to become a novelist at one stage, or are you going to?
It's that little message in my head that is just etching in the corners of my brain every day. Is like, should I write a book? I don't think it's the time right now. But I do feel that one day I do want to leverage, because I just feel like, I have a lot to say, and I think I want to give it a few more years to kind of really articulate what I feel properly, or even just kind of tell a story in that way. So I don't think it's my time yet, but maybe one day it's still on the cards. I would absolutely love to either, not necessarily my story, but maybe kind of just like a story and channel a little bit more of that creative writing again, because, it's very easy to lose it as you get older. I think I kind of express myself in so many different ways creatively when I'm a child, as we all do. And then you kind of lose that as you get older. So I want to kind of find that again eventually.
Find my creativity. Wow. That's such a good way to finish. Thank you so very much. I wonder if there's a book in your organizational history. There's a great leadership coach out there, George McKelly, who, have you ever heard of the fish market over in the States?
No.
So fish market
Okay.
is literally that, a fish market where it's now a global sensation, where it's a really interactive experience buying fish from the fish market. You hold these things and you get photos with them and they throw them around, and it's quite
Nice.
it's quite the movement, let's say. And George, I just forget his last name, actually worked with the fish market to build them into that corporate global sensation
Yeah.
from a nothing fish market that was making no money. But he wrote a book about it. He wrote a book about the culture and the journey of the organization. And, I always
Fantastic.
look at big businesses and I think, oh, if someone wrote a book about the history of this organization, what would it say?
Yeah.
But anyway, there might be something for you one day in your business to
I'll keep
map
that in
that out.
mind. Great idea.
Do that. Let me wrap up our amazing session, and I'm going to come back to you for a little bit of brilliance just to finish us off. So, team, what a great conversation. And I reached out to Adelia, as you heard, to really unpack the connection between corporate comms and influence, and just see if we can't learn something around, what it means to communicate in an influential way in a corporate setting. And Adelia's got some great experience, lived in a couple of different countries, and we started talking about what influence means to the different generations. And we talked about social media for Gen Zers, that the gig's up. And I love that. I love that where Adelia said the gig is up, that we, as Gen Zers, or Gen Z, are looking for people and influencers who are more authentic. We don't just buy the stuff now, we buy the person. And we're a bit more specific with who we sort of follow now. And I think that's amazing. And then when I asked Adelia who Adelia was influenced by, very clearly Anthony Bourdain. I'm gonna have to reach out to Anthony, I think, and ask Anthony what it is that is important to Anthony. That happens to be my first name too, by the way. Anton's short for Anthony. There you go. There's a fun fact. But I love how Adelia talked about her first love was journalism, and that was actually my first love too, which is, I wanted to do sports journalism, and had a great legal studies teacher who really encouraged me to do that. And it was just that I failed school, that I got expelled, so I never really kept in touch with them, and ended up as an apprentice, which really wasn't my jam. And so I really get where Adelia's coming from, that we lose maybe our childhood dreams, or we lose our creativity, and we lose our real deep love for whatever it is that we start with over time. And I think, how do we get that back was really some of the stuff that we were talking about at the end with Adelia, Deandra. And, when I asked Adelia that question, will she ever go back to creative writing? She said, absolutely, it's just not my time yet. And, as an author of 8 books, I just know the value and how much energy that you put into writing a book, and how much fun it is, and how rewarding it is. We've got one coming out in the next couple of weeks about this podcast, Adelia, would you believe, some of the great conversations from this. So it's called Leaders of Influence. So you'll go onto our mailing list now. Now back to Adelia, Deandra. Adelia, what would you like to finish off with today?
I just want to thank you a lot for reaching out to maybe a younger female voice. I feel like that I was taken back at how, because usually I feel like a platform is always kind of targeted towards those with a lot more experience. And, and I think it goes back to what we were talking about, giving, the platform to someone who is, maybe in a younger generation, because I think, you need to kind of have sides and perspectives from all kind of walks of life, because everyone has a story. There's a story everywhere. So I just wanted to thank you for kind of, platform. And I've obviously, there's so many different kinds of people that I'm sure that you talk to, but so I just kind of wanted to thank you for kind of giving me that chance opportunity. I'm usually a behind the scenes person. I used to be a theater kid, but now I'm behind the scenes, so this was a really great opportunity to step outside of my comfort zone, and I thank you for giving me that opportunity.
I'm floored. That is beautiful to say that. It was my pleasure and a privilege to talk to you. I just can't believe you. I actually still can't believe you said yes. And so there's
Cool.
a bit of mutual gratitude, which is really nice. And and you're right. I've spoken to, like, today. Let me run you through the podcast from today. Leadership coach out of San Francisco, neuropscientist, neuropsych, who developed a resilience framework that is now global and in organizations. Then a CEO of a rugby league football club, and then I can't even remember. Oh, and then a finance broker, and then anyway, and here we are. So, and here we are with Adelia DeAndrea, and so we got this whole. I just want to speak to everyone in Adelia
That's
and just get
great.
everyone's perspective. So, there's, what is it? Everyone should have a voice.
Yeah.
So,
Huge believer of that. Yeah.
thanks again.
Thank you for listening to the Leaders of Influence podcast with Anton Gint. And if this episode gave you even one idea that you can use this week, can you please do me these 3 things? Follow the show so you never miss an amazing leadership conversation. Share this episode with one leader on your team or on another team who you think could benefit from it. And if you want the full framework, the full experience, and to dive deeper, grab the book Leaders of Influence. By the way, that book spent a week on the bestseller list. It is built to help you lead with conviction, earn buy-in faster, and drive execution without having to chase people. If you want to bring leaders of influence into your business, if you want to have a conversation around how you can create leaders of influence, reach out. Let's talk. The links to connect with us are in the show notes. See you on the next episode.